Magandang araw sa inyong lahat. Maraming salamat for inviting the two of us to join this very important na gathering tungkol sa 50th anniversary ng martial law. Ako si Karlo nga, from the Congress of Teachers and Educators for Nationalism and Democracy or Content, and nagtuturo sa UP Diliman College of Arts and Letters.
Yan. Hello, ako naman po si Orly Putong. Mula po ako sa School of Library and Information Studies and kasalukuyan pong researcher para sa Ecumenical Institute for Labor Education and Research o ILER.
Yung presentation namin ngayong araw ay batay sa aming pananaliksik bilang bahagi ng research team na itinalaga ng UP Diliman last year for the 50th anniversary na yung celebration ng 50th anniversary ng Diliman Commune. So medyo original nakasulat yung pananaliksik namin sa Ingles, kaya pag paumanhin nyo kami kung medyo may halong English yung aming presentation, parang Taglish nga, in fact it's primarily English. So una sa lahat, ano nga ba yung Diliman Commune, for the information ng mga hindi nakakaalam pa, it started in February 1, 1971. This was the time when students barricaded the main entrances of the UP Diliman campus in response sa mga panawagan ng iba't ibang mga organizations to support yung strike ng mga transport workers at that time, mga jeepney, bus drivers, because they were protesting a 10 centavo oil price hike. But then what happened was that the shooting of a student, Pastor Messina, by a conservative university professor, and then you have the violent incursions by the police, the Metrocom, and the QCPD. It led to the spontaneous escalation of the situation, leading towards a dramatic 9-day takeover by students, faculty, staff, and residents of the country's premier state university. So imagine that, yung national university mo taken over by students and the academic community. So this was the Diliman Commune. Using oral histories of the communards, that's how they call themselves, that we interviewed last year, and then also archival materials. Our presentation would really just like to tell the story of the dialectics, the dynamics of spontaneity in organization, in the origin of this quote-unquote uprising, because this uprising was a product of outrage against violent police and military incursions, and then there was later subsequent attempts by activist groups led by national democratic organizations like the KM and the SDK to give direction to this spontaneous outrage by establishing an organization. They called it the Provisional Directorate to coordinate resistance inside the campus and the raising of political consciousness among the participants of this uprising. So in a way, we really try to turn away from mainstream scholarly accounts that paint this Diliman Commune. Sabi nila, it's like a planned destabilization plot. This was a conspiracy by KM and SDK to embarrass Marcos. And then the other ones say that it's really just a purely spontaneous phenomenon. So like that was in the column of Tiglao, saying that it's really inconsequential. These opinions can be read in the main in the Trotskyite polemic by American scholar Joseph Scalise. Nandyan, he said that, who emphasizes that it was planned and coordinated. It's a conspiracy by radical youth groups, and against that kind of point of view, we make use of a historical materialist and critical social movement theorizing. In the main, we are also influenced by Lenin's critique of spontaneity and Mao's theorizing and praxis of the mass line to really look at the dynamics between spontaneity and organization in mass uprisings and mass movements. To put it into context, the Diliman Commune was really part of widespread protest, strike actions against oil price hike, against imperialism, US bases, police brutality. Before the imposition of martial law, it was really part of a continuum of the rise of the ND movement. In that decade, 1964 KM up to 1970, the first quarter storm. And the immediate context of the commune was it was the series of oil price hikes that opened the year 1971. In response to this, organizations, activist organizations, they organized a mass campaign. So this was the planned part. No? They planned and organized a mass campaign to mobilize support for the striking drivers. Because at the time, there was a plan by the Malayang Pagkakaisa ng Samahan ng Chuper at the Pasang Mazda to have a strike against the oil price hike. So this broad support for the strike spurred the formation of a coordinating council between the public transport groups and as well as students, including SOCDEM groups, ND groups, the radicals and the moderates, and various organizations and students, including those in UP Diliman, promised to hold solidarity actions for drivers. So on February 1, the strike began. Despite police repression, which included actually the arrest of the chairperson of Pasang Mazda, Lupino Lazaro, on that day, the strike persisted and like for a week. It crippled transportation in Metro Manila and surrounding provinces, including in Laguna, where the students in Los Baños also held barricades. If you look at the news accounts, did this actually debunk the accounts by Scalise, who claims that the strike quickly fizzled. It was just a pretext by the radicals to really just create anarchy and mayhem. By Wednesday, according to the Manila Times, 80% of the jeepneys were already not in the streets. And amidst all of this, the strike events, youth activists proceeded to organize protest centers in along major roads in beside major universities and colleges, of course, including in UP Diliman. And while violent reprisals by local police and the Metrocom, this would lead to injuries, arrests, and even deaths, several deaths during that time. So what happened in UP Diliman? Let's turn to Orly.
Yan. So regarding what happened during sa UP Diliman. So on February 1, 1971, the UP Student Council pushed through with its plans of setting up symbolic barricades in the university's main entry points. It was in solidarity, of course, with the striking jeepney drivers during that time. So the killing of Sonny Messina, a UP freshman, one of those who started manning the barricades, and the violent attempts by the Philippine Constabulary's Metropolitan Command and the Quezon City Police Department, led by then Colonel Tomas Caringal, to disperse the barricades. However, sparked the spontaneous takeover of the entire campus at the University of the Philippines in Diliman. So next slide, please. So yeah, here's one of our one of the participants, one of the witnesses and participants of the commune that we interviewed during the celebration of the 50 years of the Diliman Commune. So according to Inday Sahor, who's also an SDK member during that time. So at first, we were just protesting with the jeepney drivers against the increase of oil prices, and then the death of Messina became the trigger point that led to the formation of what we now know as the Diliman Commune, where we literally took over the entire university. So next. Yan. So Erickson Bacolinaw, he was then the UP Student Council chairperson, and he was also a member of the Kabataang Makabayan during this time. So he explained that there was a leap from the concept of barricades. So initially, it was a form of solidarity and sympathy with the drivers. Eventually, it became a concept of a student-led takeover of the university. So according Bacolinaw explained in this quote, he explained that the idea of setting up a commune was taken up spontaneously and quickly became the consensus among participants in reaction to the state violence, such that when the first meeting of the directorate took place on the 4th of February 1971, they were then only formalizing the reality that has already taken shape on the ground. So this was kabaliktaran from what other scholars are claiming na parang this is a pre-planned anarchy to take over the university. So next slide, please. So all of our interviewees were consistent in denying the spurious claim that the commune was premeditated, a point reiterated also by Cabo ni Ilagan in the article against historical distortions about the Diliman Commune. So next slide, please. So here, one of our respondents, of course, was Sir Gary, the late Gary Olivar. He was then the SDK National Council member, and he was also the spokesperson during the time of the commune. He then eventually turned his back on his radical convictions and insists that there was no deliberate plan to establish the commune. So even the likes of Sir Gary denied the claims that the commune was pre-planned. And then next
no?
slide.
Sige. So, sir, to continue, Orly, to give an initial synthesis, we could say, that, exploitative relations, and if there's repression, this would inevitably spark, spontaneous struggles among different sectors, But if we follow Lenin, he would say that, yes, there are spontaneous struggles, but militant organization, with discipline, is necessary to consolidate the spontaneous elements to address both the urgent issues at hand, the tactical issues, and to give a more long-term strategic perspective for more long-standing social transformation. So in the case of the commune, our initial analysis, we see that the ND activists, they organized the initial barricades. And they just wanted to support the striking drivers, but then you had here a situation when Messina was shot, and then the Metrocom began to invade the campus in the first day of the strike, and this aroused the spontaneous action, the wide mass of students and people, even residents inside the campus. So the KM and SDK, the Student Council of UP, the ND activists, they saw this as an opportunity to organize the commune in order to address certain issues while raising their political consciousness and militancy. In our interview with Ma'am Judith Aguiwalo, in fact, she gives credit to the deepening of ND organizing work within UP for the ease with which spontaneous elements really embrace the need for a commune. She explained that there was university-wide organizational structure of the KM and SDK, and then they had the college level chapter later on, and then in the wake of the first quarter storm, and they even organized ND-led traditional student organizations as is enumerated in the slides. So the attempt by activists to consolidate those who participated in the barricades illustrates the dynamic nature of uprisings, the mass movements, social movements, and also at the same time you have here the uneven development of a political consciousness. So we underscore that there are varying levels of consciousness, conviction, and participation among the participants of a particular protest or movement. We will see that later. Orly will explain it. Following Mao Zedong, which activists at the time read a lot with the Red Book, Mao Zedong's theorization of the mass line. We also see the categorization of movement participants between you have the advanced elements, you have the middle elements, and then you have the backward elements. So to put it simply, in any mass movement, there are those who are spontaneously drawn as the events unfold. So this is what happened to many students who spontaneously reacted to the violence of the state forces. Meanwhile, there are also the conscious elements, the middle and the advanced, such as the members of the Student Council, the KM, who created opportunities for movements to achieve more long-term and more fundamental change. So again, Orly, you could continue.
Yeah. So the reflections of Rose Torres Yu, she was then a graduating student in the College of Education during the Commune, was then also unaffiliated with any activist organization, can give us an important insight as to how people can be drawn into spontaneous action and how it transforms them. So Torres Yu was a spectator during the first few days of the barricades until they saw some women picking up empty soda bottles and canisters to be used in the making of Molotov cocktails and pillboxes. They eventually got convinced by talking to them and helped in picking up materials to be brought to the pavilions of Palma Hall, which was the parang siya yung pinaka-sentro nun ng tipunan ng mga activists during the barricades. And then next slide, please. So, as participants in the broader movement, and the activists also adapted to the change conditions and to the reactions, both of the state forces and the students. Their challenge is to consolidate, the spontaneous participants in the barricades. So, and the activists conducted education and propaganda to raise the participants' understanding of systemic issues and revolutionary alternatives. They took over the DZUP radio station and published the Bandilang Pula, which was then a newsletter to air their sentiments. Bandilang Pula used to be a newsletter by the SDK. They took over the tapping of the resident halls as sites of ideological consolidation through discussion groups, teach-ins, and bonfires also figured into the participation of dormitory residents in sustaining the barricades. So next slide, please. Even residents inside the campus. So hindi lang mga estudyante ito, even those in nearby communities and yung communities within the campus were drawn to the barricades. Julian B. Santos or si Jolly Santos, an SDK member during the commune and resident of Barangay Cruz Naligas, recalled the participation of his fellow residents in the events of the commune. So organizational work in the community secured broad mass support. These areas protected and fed the communards during the 9 long days of the commune, as Inday Sahor discusses. So according to Inday Sahor, they were the pipeline. They were really the pipeline of information where the military is positioning. They had their boys and daughters sending us the information. They were the ones who knew where the military were positioning in Ateneo. They were the ones who tell us the numbers. And they were also giving us food. They are the ones who organized pandesal and coffee, any food that they can put together. The mass support of the people living in the Balara area was very crucial in sustaining the Diliman Commune. And then next, we go to the provisional directorate. So the extent of radicalization formed the material basis for the students' spontaneous clamor to strengthen the barricades and to establish a provisional directorate for the commune. So the directorate served to organize the movement, establishing various committees to oversee the different functions within the barricades. So the entire membership of the provisional directorate was published in a report by the Manila Times. They were invited to the directorate by Erickson Bacolinaw, who was the chairperson of the University Student Council during that time. So according to Cabo ni Ilagan, so he describes what does the work of the directorate, the Diliman Commune Directorate. So from what I remember, I was co-chair of the Committee of Education with Judith Taguiwalo's brother, Mario Taguiwalo, who I remember at that time was the chair of the SDK chapter in UP Diliman. So we were co-chairs of education. There was a committee for health, committee for security, and other tasks and issues that needed to be addressed in the Diliman Commune. So in setting up the provisional directorate, setting up the provisional directorate marked the point when organized forces found the organizational form that lent direction to the spontaneous uprising after being constantly being overtaken by the fast turn of events. So in truth, what the commune's critics like Scali said derived as its anarchistic side is a consequence of its spontaneous rather than planned and coordinated origins. As Ray Vea points out in his summing up of their experiences in the commune, so according to him, these errors were subsequently rectified the following days. Fewer explosions, taxis were all returned, drivers of other taxis commandeered were given free meals, looting was effectively checked, the anarchic organization, due in part to the fluid constituency of the commune, was later remedied with an efficient and proper division of tasks. So the formation of the provincial directorate ultimately embodied the dynamics between organized forces and the spontaneous elements in the commune. It helped forward concrete demands and laid down the tactics of the commune based on the unfolding situation. So we go now to the aftermath of the commune, which Carlo will discuss.
This is the last slide na, no? Well, everything has to end, no? The university students mounted the uprising. They really knew, no, that the limitations of their power, no? Because if you read the essays by Joma, no, on youth on the march, no, and student power, no, they know that the social revolution cannot be attained by their actions alone, no. So they later on they would lift their barricades, and they ended this commune, no, with a clear view, no, that the revolutionary path, no, lies beyond the university. Nevertheless, no, this experience, along with the entire radical, no, and militant sequence from the 60s, no, up to 70s, no, before the imposition of martial law, would help really help steel a generation of youth that would lead the underground, no, struggle to the Marcos dictatorship. Today, amidst the Marcos Duterte's tandem's attempt to revise history, no, and to extend their holder power, no, it's important that we draw lessons, no, from not just from the Diliman Commune, no, but from the past sequences of struggles, no, that were really brilliantly discussed, no, in this past 2 days, no, in this conference, no, and from the Diliman Commune, we could get the crucial lesson, no, on the need for students and academics to link arms, no, with the broad masses of workers and peasants, no, in order for them to be an effective voice, no, and force to enact social change, no. So dito na kami nagtatapos ni Orly. Maraming salamat.